Hello, my name is Ann Gritch, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this segment of the oral history of the Diocese of San Jose. And with me today is Father Tim Kidney, one of the giants of our diocese, one who has made incredible contributions to our history. So I'm delighted that Father Tim is with us. Welcome.
Thank you. I don't consider myself a giant.
Well, I consider you a giant, and many others do. Father, when the diocese was announced, the announcement was made in January of 1981. Where were you stationed?
I was at St. Patrick's Seminary.
Ah,
Actually, Archbishop Quinn called me to see if he could talk to me about staying in the diocese.
ah,
I said, is this because you want me to, you think I might leave the seminary in terms of teaching?
mm-hmm.
And he said, yes. I said, I've already got that approved. He said, fine.
Oh, good. So you knew you wanted to come to San Jose.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you teaching at St. Patrick's?
Social ethics, pastoral supervision,
Ah.
and pastoral counseling.
And you were there for how long? How many years?
8 years full-time and 3 years part-time.
Good. So I'm sure some of our priests had you in class.
Yeah, the ones that have been ordained 25 years.
Well, there's
It's
a
a long
number
way,
of them.
long way to go.
Then when I came to the diocese in 1987, I came in January of 87, and I think it was that June that you were made pastor at St. Maria Goretti.
Correct.
Okay, tell me about Maria Goretti, what it was like then.
He was a sleeping giant. The parish had become very Vietnamese,
Mm-hmm.
very Mexican,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the structures of the parish were white middle-class leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So I was asked by the bishop to make it more multicultural
Mm-hmm.
and to give more programs. I was very fortunate the diocese came up with a program that Father Matteo Schiti and I used. 3 priests from the Marist community, one from Mexico, one from Canada, and one from the United States,
Mm-hmm.
all who spoke Spanish,
Wonderful.
were going to make themselves available as an evangelization team. But you had to take the team.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So after a couple other parishes turned it down, Matteo and I jumped at it, and our population went from the Spanish Mass of 150 a week to 1,500
Wow.
in a year and a half.
That is amazing.
Now, some of that was because of their fine work, and some of it was because of the fine work of Father Kevin Joyce.
Well, I'm
Right.
sure some of it was your fine work.
I had sense to say yes.
Well, and you were the man in charge.
And we also had a parish mission that was just begun in my time, just the early stages of it, which has become Our Lady of Refuge Parish.
Mm-hmm. Was that, there were 2 sisters that
Two
operated
sisters,
that, 2 Holy Name sisters?
Kevin Joyce's aunt
Yeah.
and her good friend.
Yeah, she was a good lady.
There was a brother, Maris brother, who preceded that, doing some groundwork in terms of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I said yes to. The rest of it just flowed.
Now, Father, I remember we had a month-long intensive Spanish class at the diocesan offices on Lenzen, and you and I were in the same class. Did you find that helpful?
Oh, it did. I was comfortable being at meetings,
Mm-hmm.
not hearing confessions so much unless they slowed down, because I wasn't always sure who was sinning against whom. But I had enough Spanish to get by.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't by no means fluent, but I wasn't totally an idiot when it came to Spanish.
So you were 6 years at Goretti?
Correct, 1993.
And then, it seems to me, if I remember, you went to Africa.
Yes, I always believed the priest should give 10% of his life to some special work or mission work,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't given my 10% of mission work, so I asked the diocese, because they were having trouble finding me a place for an assignment. They had everybody else assigned but me. And And I said, well, could I go to Africa? And the bishop said, well, let me hear more about it. So I got him all, got him the contract, I got him what my job description would be, I got him the situation of living and all that. And he said yes, and so I went to St. Dominic's Seminary, which is a theological seminary in Zambia. It's in Lusaka, the capital.
Mm-hmm. Is that a Sulpician seminary? Or were the Sulpicians involved?
The Sulpicians were involved. They were trying to set up a mission community where the priests of Zambia would take over themselves as Sulpicians, which they've done now. But it was 5 of us Anglo priests were there.
What was that like?
Well, I'll never complain about working in the United States again. I had 17 spiritual directees.
Oh my.
I had the pastoral program to drive the kids around to the different communities, some which were in the barrio, which they call shanty compounds. And I was in charge of security. I had 2 German checkers.
Oh my.
That I walked around and the students got in their rooms. I had different duties that I normally wouldn't have, plus teaching and preaching.
And you were there, was it 3 years?
3 years.
How was the re-entry coming home after 3 years in a very different setting?
I've never thought about that. Since I came home every summer to raise funds, it was sort of flowed.
So a foot in each door, each
yeah,
camp.
it was easy to come back.
So then where were you assigned after?
I'm trying to think about that. Well, I had a little time as a permanent diaconate director. I probably have the record for the shortest appointment. It lasted 3 weeks.
It lasted 3 weeks, but you did an awful lot of work in those 3 weeks.
I studied programs and made recommendations. The program that you and
Jack Bonser.
Jack Bonser put together, I think, is the finest in the country.
Well, thank you. I still have that memory in my living room when you and Jack came for dinner and you asked Jack would he take over, because you were being called for something. I can't remember. Maybe I don't remember.
St. Cyprian's.
St. Cyprian. That was it. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Now that was a difficult assignment because they had a school that was beginning to slide down. So a very generous donor gave $4.5 million. I raised another $500,000.
Wow.
To renovate the school, to put additions on it. So it was state of the art, but it didn't
crumble.
Took a while for it to start sliding again, but it did.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate to have an angel.
Helpful. Very helpful.
People thought I was a great fundraiser, and I said, I didn't do anything. They came to me.
Well.
I took the check.
Yeah, well, they obviously came to you because of the work you were doing. Jamaica, 2007.
This was a program that was started by the constant asking by Bishop Charles IV, who is now the retired Archbishop of Kingston, to go and help in his diocese, Montego Bay. Now, this is not a difficult assignment. The Gold Coast is in the Diocese of Montego Bay.
Right?
But he wanted us to do an evangelization program. Now, originally it was myself, but the bishop said, I don't think it's good that you go down there by yourself. And so he asked Marino whether they would give a priest to help. We got a first-round draft choice. Father Leo Shea was the vicar general. And he came, but they brought all the money. They sent me money, and I bought 2 cars, one for each of us. They put up the money for the program. And so they kept talking about me as the great leader. I said, you got this all wrong. I'm a neophyte in this. Here's a pro. And he really was. He was remarkable.
You two were a pretty good team.
We did okay.
And you set up an evangelization team, right? The E team?
Well, before that, I went to the bishop and I said, Bishop, you want me to do a leadership program? I said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is there's a need out there. The bad news are there are no followers. Everybody's a leader.
Everybody's a leader.
And I said, they don't have any good sense of community. So I went around to every parish in the diocese twice. In my first 6 months there, Leo joined me the second time. And we did an evangelization program where we do the basic teachings of the church, build some community, and leaders from that arose. That they were already leaders, but they were not recognized as such in some places. So then we did a training program for them, which was a 3-year program that I helped start in a conversation with you.
I remember.
But really, Father Robert Brocato, and Leo Shea implemented with your great generosity.
Well, it was wonderful. But before that, were you involved in setting up their deacon program in Montego Bay?
Yes, I was not the major person in it. I helped them set it up, and I taught in it. But that was pretty much handled by a professor from Kingston University.
One of the things I remember so vividly from the time that 3 trips I made to Montego Bay, when you mentioned going to the different parishes, it's not like going to parishes in San Jose. I can remember those roads with the potholes, and it was...
Bishop Domain came down to see me, and we went down to Victoria Falls. And he said, I see you have a PhD, doctorate in potholes.
Potholes. It was amazing.
That was an interesting challenge because after I left, Father Brocato was there with Father Shea, and they went to set up your program, ran a couple classes through it, and I was sent down to do an evaluation of the program. My conclusion in consultation with you and Father Brocato was, we've accomplished our goal. We were set out to do leadership training, we set up to do an evangelization program, we've done it, we're not needed here anymore. And that's remarkable to say in 7 years we actually accomplished our goal.
And that is...
And their program is running fine.
And still, I was so privileged. Monsignor Larkin and I taught that first weekend course, and the students were just wonderful. They were just... And there was a real bond between our Institute for Leadership and Ministry and their Institute for Servant Leadership is what they were. And then when I went to graduation, 4 years later when they graduated that first class, it was just remarkable to see, you're right, the leadership, the enthusiasm. It was, we did the job. It was wonderful. So you did more than 10% of special projects or special mission with Jamaica and Zambia.
It's funny how that came about, that I went to Jamaica. The bishop sent out a letter for any diocesan priest who would be interested in going. And I was doing some work at St. John Vianney, helping build a gym, a pastoral center. And so I sent a letter in. If no one else will go, I will go because I have background. The bishop called me and said, I'd like you to go. He said, you're the one I wanted. I said, Bishop, I'm the only one who applied.
Yeah. I was glad that Father Bricado followed you because we did need the 7 years to get it
Yeah.
up and running. Yeah.
And he really did a great relationship with the people.
Yeah. He still speaks very fondly of his time in Jamaica. Yeah. Wow. So, retired now. Tell me, what kind of, what significant events would you say have changed in the diocese over the 35 years since the beginning?
Well, there's something in my early pastorship here, what was basically community organizing.
Mm-hmm.
It started out with priests from the East Side, Larry Largeni and Bob Moran,
Mm-hmm.
doing the ecumenical sponsoring committee, which was to look to see whether they could set up a program here. After 2 years of that, we ended up going into PACT and PIA.
Mm-hmm.
That's PIA for the Santa Clara County from downtown north,
Mm-hmm.
and PIA, PACT from downtown south and east. Basically, it was to teach people how to meet with a group of people, train them to go out and do one-to-one visits, come back, hear what the concerns of the community are, and then build an organization to respond to those needs with public officials or private people. That's still going on. It's still in existence.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't as quite as robust as it was there,
No.
but it had a major impact on different programs. Education is impacted,
Mm-hmm.
and that's still going on. Housing prices. I was St. Cyprian. We had the candidates for the council could come to us, and we got a commitment out of them that they would go further than what they were originally asking for in terms of housing. I think it went from 10% to 14%. The numbers may not be accurate, but it's close. It was a 4 percentage point
Mm-hmm.
jump,
Mm-hmm.
and everybody was stunned by it. And we had issues on violence,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But that was a significant issue for the priests of the diocese, because a lot of them got involved. Usually it's 1 or 2 people in social justice,
Mm-hmm.
but this was quite a few parishes.
Yeah. I know my parish, St. Thomas Aquinas, is part of PIA in the north. Now, PACT is people acting in community together.
Mhm.
What is PIA? People, I'm not sure what PIA stands for. We just refer to it always as PIA. Huh?
People in action.
People in action. Okay. Where did you learn community organizing, or was it just by doing?
They gave you special workshops. They sent you away for a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then had follow-ups. So PICO, which was the overriding program,
Mhm.
which was run by the Jesuits, gave the training. Both of those who were community organizers professionally, and those of us who were sort of second tier.
Mm-hmm. You also taught for us in the Institute for Leadership and Ministry. I remember one class when you asked students what a living wage would be in San Jose. And this was probably in the late 90s. And I remember it was $25 an hour with benefits and without benefits, and 22 with benefits. And I remember we all were, wow, we never realized that. You've done a lot of kind of consciousness raising, I think.
Oh, thank you. The thing that I found interesting is I was pastor of many parishes, and I was director of the Newman Center,
Mm-hmm.
is that every parish has its own unique charism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we may not do it well, but they have it. And if you can keep that charism going, and then do the other things that need to be done or you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
but if you don't do that charism, you're not going to get anything done. I made a speak at Maria Goretti, not fostering enough to middle-class leadership.
Mm-hmm.
They felt I was pushing them out. I was just adding to their number, but they felt they were being pushed out. And if you have a clear focus of you want to engage the Filipino community, the Vietnamese community, and the Spanish community, then you have to do it in a wholehearted way. Little known about my work at St. Patrick's was I was a priest who was pastor there and stepped down as pastor to become associate pastor so the Vietnamese could become pastor.
This was where?
At St. Patrick's.
At St. Patrick's.
That's when the change came where they started to decentralize.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Well, I stepped down to help them do that.
Was that hard to do?
No, because if I didn't step down, I would have had to deal with the Vietnamese community myself.
And didn't feel
I didn't
that
feel
prepared to do
I
that.
didn't feel qualified to do that. Too much history.
Too much history.
And too little knowledge of Vietnamese.
Yeah. So, varied ministries. All
I've been
in
very
San Jose.
fortunate. I've probably had the most varied ministry of all the priests of the diocese. Bishops have been very supportive of me. Let me do the crazy ideas that I have.
Yeah, both bishops have been.
Both bishops.
Yeah. Well, we have been so fortunate in San Jose with our bishops and our priests. Yeah. So now you're retired, Father. Are you mentoring anybody? Are you?
Anybody who comes, I talk to.
You talk to?
They don't come in droves. Now I have Parkinson's, so I'm speaking slowly.
Yeah, but you do very well. Anything else we should be talking about?
Just the influx of the immigrant church of Filipinos. They began in the 60s and 70s with the professional class. And they brought all their aunts and uncles and mothers and siblings. And at the time, we did not have the priests to take care of all those needs. Now we have many Filipino priests. Many of our young priests are Filipino. Same is true as the Vietnamese. At the beginning, they just had a few priests. Now they have a plentiful amount. But we would not have a presbyterate existing today if it were not the influence.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate to get priests who belonged to the Incarnate Word community, who felt they no longer felt part of that community, wanted to become part of the diocese. They've been remarkable in helping us reach out to the Chinese and Spanish-speaking communities.
That's very true. And I've noticed also, just in recent years, and it's been long enough, that some of our Vietnamese priests particularly, and some of our Filipino, are born here or came here when they were very young, as opposed to the generation before them, who came maybe into seminary or even after seminary, came as priests.
I call myself a Neanderthal.
Because?
The immigration program has passed me by. I can't deal with all those cultures at once anymore.
Well, there are a lot of them. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, how the diocese has changed and evolved in 35 years.
When I was in the seminary, we had 52 in the class. They were either Irish or Italian, and we had one Mexican. But Irish or Italian and one Mexican. Gone out of those days.
I know. When I was at USF in the 60s, the same thing. You were either Irish or Italian. Yeah. Maybe 3 or 4 African Americans, but Irish or Italian. That was how it was. That was the church. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for enduring this.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us your memories. It's been very, very helpful. Thank you.